I told my daughter-in-law I will never be her mother. And now my family says I went way too far.
This situation is mostly about my daughter-in-law, Rose. Her biological mother left when she was very young, and she spent part of her childhood in foster care. My son has told me she's currently in therapy. I genuinely feel sympathy for what she went through, but it doesn't excuse what's been happening. Rose constantly ignores my boundaries. She's very physically and emotionally affectionate, and no matter how many times I correct her, she refuses to call me by my name. She only refers to me as Mom. I've told her repeatedly that I'm not comfortable with that, and that I want her to use my name instead. She agrees, and then immediately goes back to calling me Mom. That's not the only issue. She regularly asks invasive questions about why I'm not close with my own mother. For context, my relationship with my mother was extremely unhealthy. I've told Rose multiple times that this is not something I want to discuss, but she keeps pushing, insisting that I should reconnect with her because, in her words, family always comes first. She genuinely doesn't understand how someone could choose distance from a parent, and she refuses to let the topic go. Because of this, I'll be honest, I'm not particularly close to her. I've spoken to my son about it, and he keeps asking me to be patient. I've also spoken directly to Rose and asked her to respect my boundaries. She promises she will, and then ignores them again. This is where things escalated. My younger daughter, Emily, who's 20, and I planned a short weekend trip. This was not a vacation. Emily has a medical issue and needs to see a specialist several states away. She hasn't shared the details with the rest of the family yet because she wants to have a clear plan first. Somehow, Rose found out about the trip. She called me and demanded to know why she wasn't invited. I told her it was an important medical trip, not a fun one. She accused me of lying. She said it was clearly a mother-daughter trip and that I was intentionally excluding her. I repeated that it wasn't a girls' trip. She refused to drop it. She insisted she needed to come because she's my daughter. She said, "You're my mom. I have to be there. I'm your kid." That's when I snapped. I told her very clearly that I will never be her mother, that marrying my son does not make her my parent. I told her to leave me alone. And I said that even if this were a mother-daughter trip, she still wouldn't be invited, because she is not my child. Then I hung up. Now my son says I need to apologize and invite her on the trip. He says I was cruel, out of line, and unnecessarily harsh. The situation has spread to the rest of the family, and everyone seems to have an opinion. Even Emily is getting backlash, which feels especially unfair, considering she hasn't even shared why the trip is happening yet. So now I'm questioning myself. Was I wrong for enforcing my boundaries and refusing to be her parent? Or did she cross the line by trying to force a mother-daughter relationship I never agreed to? I was told I ruined a 2-year-old child's life because I explained how her name is usually pronounced. I was sitting in A&E waiting around when I started talking to an American mother and her young daughter. The kid was about 2 years old and was completely fascinated by the artwork on my leather jacket. Bright colors, patterns, the works. The mother seemed friendly enough, and at some point she mentioned her daughter's name. She said her name was Grain. I paused for a second and said something like, "That's a really unique name. I've never met anyone called Grain before." She smiled and said her daughter was named after her great-grandmother and that it was an Irish name. And that's when alarm bells went off in my head, because I realized the name wasn't Grain, it was Grania. For context, Grania is an Old Irish name, usually pronounced something like Grania. At this point, I knew I was walking into dangerous territory, so I tried to be as tactful as humanly possible. I said, "Irish has such an interesting alphabet. How is her name spelled? Irish names can be tricky." She spelled it out. Grainnae. Yep, Grania. My partner, who has studied Irish history and the Irish diaspora at university, was standing next to me, trying not to laugh or die of secondhand embarrassment. So I tried to frame it positively. I said, "That's a really old-school name with a more modern pronunciation. I actually think that's a nice way to choose a name." She asked what I meant, and I said, calmly, politely, "Well, in Ireland, it's usually pronounced something like Grania." Her face immediately went red. She snapped at me and said I should never have said that in front of her daughter because now her child was going to grow up knowing her name was wrong and feel bad about herself. I was honestly shocked. I immediately apologized and said I didn't mean to cause offense at all. I told her it was a beautiful name, that both pronunciations were lovely, and that it was a wonderful way to honor her great-grandmother and her heritage. I threw out every positive reassurance I could think of, but she was furious. She told me I had ruined her daughter's self-esteem, that her life was ruined, and that I implied her existence was wrong. To be clear, I never said anything like that. I said the name was pronounced atypically. Also, the child? Completely unbothered. She was still staring at my jacket, happily pointing at the colors, totally unaware that her entire life had apparently been destroyed in the last 5 minutes. The conversation ended awkwardly, and in hindsight, yeah, maybe I should have kept my mouth shut. But at the same time, I genuinely wasn't trying to correct anyone or shame anyone. I was trying to be polite and respectful about a cultural difference. So now I'm wondering, was I wrong for explaining the traditional pronunciation of an Irish name, or did she massively overreact and project her own insecurity onto a 2-year-old?
My best friend became a lawyer and then dumped the man who paid for her entire education.
My best friend and I grew up in poverty. Where we came from, opportunities were limited. For women, the options were basically retail, sex work, drugs, or hoping a rich man would notice you. For men, it was retail, drugs, or one of the few factory jobs left. I got lucky. I dated a medical student who helped me open doors. I became a teacher, and now my husband is a doctor. I chose to work in a lower-income school because I know how rare opportunities can be. My friend wasn't as lucky. At 25, she was working minimum wage retail. That's when she met her boyfriend, a factory worker in his early 30s who came into her store regularly. He wasn't academic. School wasn't for him, but he believed in her. She told him she dreamed of becoming a criminal prosecutor, and instead of laughing or getting insecure, he encouraged her. He told her not to give up. He took out every loan he could find so she could go to school. He worked extra shifts, did most of the housework, paid the bills, handled everything so she could focus on studying for years. And it worked. She graduated. She became a lawyer. Shortly after that, she broke up with him, right as he was planning to propose. She told me that now that she was a professional, she had no interest in marrying a working-class man. She said she deserved a real man. I was horrified. I told her she was betraying the man who supported her through everything, the man who made her success possible. She got angry. She told me it's not a woman's job to pay the bills. She said I was a hypocrite because my husband earns more than I do. Then she went further. She said marriage as a life partnership is a patriarchal construct, that she has the right to date whoever she wants, and that as a feminist, I should be supporting her. That's when I snapped. I told her she wasn't just an asshole, she was giving feminists a bad name, because feminism doesn't mean using someone, discarding them, and then calling it empowerment. It means equality, including financial responsibility. We're no longer friends. And yes, he's still on the hook for the loans. She has no intention of helping him pay them back. He's seen the support people have shown him, and while he's still deeply hurt, my husband and I are doing what we can to help him get back on his feet. So now I'm asking, am I wrong for calling my best friend an asshole, or did she completely betray the man who sacrificed everything for her success?